So our next guest here at World of Retro Computing is June Tate Gans, and she is in Texas right now, right? All right.
Yep,
And
that's right.
so we did a little bit of a dress rehearsal yesterday, the day before. Things went well.
More of a technical check.
Yeah. So if you want to take it over from here, the audience that you see there's I'm not going to move my computer around, but there's lots of people around the outside. So you've got a good audience, June. All right, take it away.
Okay, awesome. So my customer greeting for most of these things is hiya, folks. Yeah, let me switch over to the presentation and we'll get started here. But yeah, so as JJ just said, my name's June. I'm actually running a YouTube channel called Nibbles and Bites. It's a fairly small channel, so you probably haven't heard of me very much. But we're going to talk about reinventing the Commodore 128D. Specifically, we're looking at trying to build a newer version of it so that other people can get their hands on it. Something that's really hard to do these days. So who am I? Well, I guess you could say I'm just a kid that grew up with BASIC. I'm a professional software engineer. I'm also an amateur YouTuber. And I'm also a retro computing enthusiast. You can see a shot of my studio, or what used to be my studio, actually, where I have a Commodore 128D, which is sort of like the star of my show, and then a Ultimate 64, a Mac Performa, and then my Amiga 4000. The collection's grown a bit since then, but that's my stuff. So how did I get into this kind of thing? Well, I've been doing pretty much what everybody else does. I'm watching other YouTubers such as the 8-Bit Guy, LGR, 8-Bit Show and Tell, for instance. But I've always been having this gnawing thing in the back of my mind. I wanted more detail. Every time somebody started talking about something, they would hit the high points, and it's like, well, what about all these little tiny bits here? All the little tiny things that we don't really think about or discuss on YouTube. I want to get more detail there. And I was slightly bored at work at the time. So I decided to start digging into the machine that I just bought, which was a Commodore 128. I used the channel sort of as a motivation to learn how these machines work from the inside and out. Because when I had them when I was a kid, I was, you know how you are when you're a little kid, right? Like you want to play the games. You don't really want to write them. You're learning about it, but you're not really totally there. But now that I'm a professional software engineer, it's like, hey, I can nail this. This is easy. So I did this for fun. Now, the thing about running the YouTube channel was that we had a problem. I'm teaching people how to use the Commodore 128, but it's really, really hard to get one. You see them on eBay just for the system itself for $700 in decent condition. And parts and pieces here and there being thrown around. We got SID chips that are dying every once in a while, CIA chips breaking everywhere. And I wanted to try and contribute back to the retro computing community as well, not just through the YouTube channel, but also to give people access to real hardware, or at least something equivalent to it. Because when you're running an emulator, it's neat. You get to see everything on the screen, but you don't know what the machine's actually doing. You don't really have the physical interaction with it. You're not dealing with the machine on its own terms. You're kind of warping the experience a little bit. And so what I wanted to do was reproduce some of the physical interaction between the user and the machine itself. And so with all of these ideas floating around in my head, I created this thing called the V128 project. And the V128 project is effectively the equivalent of a C64 Mini, but it's actually the 128. And this is an open source project that is fully open up on GitHub. It's using open source emulators. We're actually using the Vice emulator as the core of this machine. And I'm actually contributing patches back upstream instead of keeping them close to my chest like everybody else does. So the idea here is to get everybody involved, because the more we have contributions to it, the longer this thing's going to last, and the more detailed we can get. And in this particular image, actually this particular image, you can see that I've taken a lot of measurements from my 128D, but it's not 100% accurate. So I got as close as I could, but I'm not a mechanical engineer. I'm a software engineer. So this is as close as I could get. But hey, I'm an embedded software engineer, and I have a 3D printer, so I'm going to do it. So the idea is that we're running a Linux distribution that boots to the Vice emulator. And the Vice emulator is outputting through the Raspberry Pi 4 compute module to 2 different displays, because the 128 has this funny ability to output to 2 separate displays. So this made for kind of a wrinkle in this whole mess, right? Vice itself, unless you're running the GTK version of Vice, only outputs to 1 display at a time. So obviously I got to fix this, right? So I started contributing. I was working with a Vice team member by the name of Blackie Stardust on submitting this change, and I made all the work to make this work. So now the SDL2 backend can now output to 2 separate windows, depending on what your settings are inside the menu. And this was committed back on June 16th. But the funny thing about contributing back to open source is it starts kind of snowballing. You end up creating bugs, and you start fixing other people's bugs, and eventually, you get to commit to the core members list, and now you're a Vice team member.
Nice.
So it's been an interesting ride so far, but this is just the software aspect, right? I just want to be able to output these 2 displays. So I created this other idea, right? I wanted to have this other way of emulating the physical reality of using the machine as well. And once we've got the software ready and we've printed up our enclosure, like that's only like a small amount of work, but we don't have the physical interaction yet. And what's the number one thing you're doing with these old machines? Besides waiting?
Playing games.
Playing games, yeah, that's one of them, right? But you're swapping the floppies all the time, right? So here comes the 3D printer again, right? We can use the 3D printer to make these little tiny 3-inch floppies, because the whole unit is actually scaled down. We actually use a 3-inch by 3-inch floppy. And these are about, I want to say 3 millimeters thick in terms of layers. And you can see the model here, the front side looks like a normal 5 1/4 floppy disk. The back side has a little cutout for an insert where you can put NFC inlay. And the idea here is that you use the NFC inlay with an NFC reader inside of the V128 to swap to the appropriate disk image without having to use menus or anything like that. So basically, when you're ready to actually just swap the sides, you literally just pull out the floppy, plug in the next one. And the way the magic part of this is essentially just a breakout board from Adafruit at the moment. And this just communicates over SPI to the Raspberry Pi, and it's a matter of just writing a few scripts to receive the interrupt, read the data, and then trigger the floppy swap inside of Vice. There's one other part of this that we have to consider. Like, we've got the floppies, we've got the video display output, we've got the physical enclosure, but it's really hard to type on a keyboard like this because of Petsky. So what we have to do instead is we have to come up with another keyboard. And WASD Keyboards over in Seattle, actually, in Washington, makes custom printed keyboards for you. And so what I did was I created an SVG containing all of the custom art and the keyboard mapping as well for the Commodore 128 keyboard, lined up on a 104 standard keyboard, like for a PC. And this is, again, all open source. You can actually buy these keyboards. I actually have one, which I'm using with my prototype at the moment. But it is natively supported in Vice. I actually added the keyboard mapping to the source distribution. So if you're building from source, you can actually use this keyboard with no changes. All of the mappings map up correctly. So shift lock, CDM, the back arrow key, the up arrow key, all of this stuff just fits perfectly. And it's also usable on the V128, of course, and available now. So if you follow the link in the previous slide, which I just extended my keyboard for, sorry, technical difficulties there. There we go. So yeah, that link there, or if you just search for V equals 128, this is an older name that I came up with because I was trying to emulate the chicken head logo. And then I realized, that's probably a bad idea. Because the equals there doesn't really work in all these various systems. Yeah. So now it's just called the V128. But Yeah, so like the keyboard actually does exist. It's shown up on a couple of my live streams on YouTube, um, and it works both for standard 104 and also through Vice. So what's already done with the V128? Well, at this point, we've got the enclosure prototype. It's usable with a Pi 4 compute module and the Pi 4 I/O board. And it's important that we use the Pi 4 I/O board because it's, as far as I'm aware, the only one that has the real-time clock on the side and also a form factor that we can reuse that has Ethernet, USB, two DisplayPort outputs, and the ability to give us a custom baseboard so that we can do things like IEC ports and user ports and all these other fancy things that the 128 actually has. We've got the custom keyboard layout. We support both dual video outputs or single video if you're wanting to do it a little bit cheap. And then the system boots device directly and runs well enough to actually function. I've shown it again on a couple of the live streams where you can actually type and run things in the emulator, or sorry, on the unit inside of Vice. And so this is actually a physical shot of it. In this particular, this is actually a still in some of an older project I didn't actually publish yet, but it is actually booting. And the thing is about yay big. I want to say it's about, well, actually, let's just take a look at it in Onshape. So Onshape itself allows us to look at the design here. I'll have to refresh for a moment. My network connection is running slow, so you'll have to bear with me for a moment.
Here it comes.
Yeah. So the actual size here is about 196 millimeters wide. So it's fairly small. And you can see, I take the, where's the front, there's the bottom, and I want the top. Take the top off, you can kind of see how it's designed. The inside here is the compute module itself, and then the baseboard. And on the back, you can see we got Ethernet, USB, actually I might be backwards, and then the two HDMI outlets. But the trick here is that over on this side, so here's the front of it, here's the floppy disk, right? And then underneath here, we have a mounting point where we can actually attach the NFC reader. So we just use double-sided sticky tape here, and then a bunch of jumper wires on the prototype back to the header over here, so that we can read floppy disks as we insert them. Well, I guess I must have mounted it a little bit too tight on there. But yeah, so I actually do have this available. I just can't find it right now because I'm between houses at the moment.
That's okay.
Otherwise, I would be showing a full demonstration of this thing.
So are the discs that go in, are they based on 3.5 or 5 1/4?
5 1/4.
Okay.
So I can actually show that here. So we've got the floppy disks here. I turned up the brightness in the presentation for it, but
Sure.
this is a 5 1/4 floppy, and then the backside there's a little cutout.
Right.
So you can put the NFC layer in there.
Cool.
So going back to the presentation. Yeah, so we've got all that. We've actually printed them out. They actually do function. But we still have things that are in progress. And we're doing a lot of community outreach, a lot of community communication on my Discord channel at the moment. We have a custom baseboard that's currently being built out. Planned parts for it are other ports like joysticks, IEC, the user port, and the cartridge port. This is being put together by a guy who goes by the name of Olapar. He's out in Germany, so we kind of have time zone issues there, but it works out well. We also have a newer enclosure that is currently being based on the original C128D variant, not the DCR. So if we go back to Onshape, I can show you what Unrepentant Geek, a good friend of mine who is a mechanical engineer, in fact, is currently prototyping out. Switch over to the main here. And then go back to one. Yeah. So it's going to take a little while for it to. Oh wait, no, this is DCR. Hang on. This might be a little bit slow. Here it is. So there's a lot of vectors inside this one, and it takes a while for it to load, but it is based on the DCR variant, which Bill Hurd himself actually prefers. But you can see that the design is much more detailed here. We've shrunk it down a bit, and we got rid of the keyboard tray storage area, but we are going to try and use this as our model going forward, because this is actually much harder to get hold of than the DCR is.
Right.
So that's kind of the goal there.
Did that one have the handle, the carrying handle on it?
It did, in fact. So you can see that over here on the side.
Okay, so
We do
so
have
you've
a
got
handle.
okay, all right, so you've got it in there. Awesome.
Yeah, so we're working on it. There's the IEC port for comparison in terms of size. So if you know
Oh, wow.
the physical size of an IEC port, this thing is really tiny. So
That's awesome.
Unrepentant Geek has kind of a thing for small things, so he's trying to make it as small as he can. We'll see how far that goes, but that's the plan at the moment. And then going back to the presentation, right, so Blackie Stardust has actually continued working on a lot of features in Vice that will actually help us out quite a bit. This includes things like the user port emulation and cartridge emulation by way of GPIOs on the Raspberry Pi itself. So this gives us the ability to actually create these ports and then plug them directly into Vice with a little bit of glue. So he's actually committed these changes to the Vice tree already. It's just a matter of getting these integrated into the system image next. And then, of course, that's the part that I'm working on at the moment. So there's still quite a lot of work to do. So you can find out a lot more information about the project at v128.info. We're on GitHub under the V128 team group. And then, of course, this is my Discord link for my YouTube channel. But we also have a channel inside of that channel called V128, and that's where we do all of our coordination and communication.
Okay, well that's awesome. Thank you very much for showing that to us. So I know I talked to June about questions and stuff. So if anyone has questions for her on her V128, or I guess anything related to the talk. Can she go back one screen and get the links up again? Okay, so an audience member, Stephen, asked if you could put the links up again so that they can get them.
Absolutely. I'm sorry. I kind of went through.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
There we go.
Yeah, they're just taking pictures of the screen. So thanks for that.
No worries. Also, Bill Hurd does show up in the Discord channel every once in a while.
Okay.
Blackie Stardust has been sort of picking his brain to make the Vice emulation more cycle accurate. One of the things that we're trying to work on right now is actually the switching between the Z80 and sorry, not the Z80, between. Oh, geez. There's a mode where we have to emulate what is currently running on the bus as we switch between, fast and slow mode, actually. Because it's not documented anywhere what's going on between all three chips, the VIC, the Z80, and the 8502.
Right.
So we're picking his brain trying to figure that out. He's also giving us pointers in how other parts of the system work.
Right.
So it's kind of like unofficially he's helping us out. So
that's awesome to have that kind of help.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anybody else on the project? What do you got, Mark? Sorry. Oh, no. I think what I think there's the questions, maybe like you've done an excellent presentation, and I mean the group that's here listening, we're all 128 fans, so we're and 128D fans, so we know what you're talking about. But that's a fantastic thing that you're working on. That's really awesome. I appreciate you coming on very much, and I thanked Emil earlier today when he was in for just putting us in touch with each other, and I'm really glad he did. So thank you very much for being a part of World of Retro Computing.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, and I'll talk to you again. And okay,
absolutely.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, we'll sign off, and I'll talk to you later. Thank you, June.
Okay, see you.
Okay, bye.
Thanks.